What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the Warzone Pacific update is now live for early access, at least, for anybody that owns and has played a match of Vanguard. They can now play on the new Caldera map, and they have all the updates and everything. And as a result, we finally now know for sure that there is unfortunately no FoV slider for any of the consoles, whether that's previous gen or next gen. I suspected this was going to be the case based on the information that we've had over the past week or so, but I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon until we knew for sure. But yes, it is confirmed there is no FoV slider for console with the Warzone Pacific update, which is definitely upsetting a very large portion of the community, and I think reasonably so. Now, at the same time, I want to make it crystal clear, this does not give anybody an excuse to straight up attack the developers, so please don't do that. But I think it is very reasonable for console players to continue to push hard for an FoV slider and a reasonably level playing field while playing Warzone. Now, I have talked about this in great detail in the past, so I'm not going to dive into as much detail as I have before. But when it comes to an FoV slider, this isn't just a graphics setting. This isn't a quality of life sort of setting. This is an actual gameplay altering setting. This changes how you approach situations. This changes how you play the game. And I noticed this immediately when I switched to playing Warzone on PC. It honestly felt almost like an entirely different game when I hopped into PC for the first time and was able to use an FoV slider. I didn't feel nearly as paranoid as I did before because I could feel a lot more confident in my area of coverage with where I could see. It didn't feel like I was looking through a toilet paper roll as I was going through the map. So for anybody that says that this doesn't have any impact on gameplay, in my mind they're either ignorant or straight up lying to you. An FoV slider does make a difference in the way that you play the game and in the way that the game feels. Now, will an FoV slider make a bad player suddenly good? No, absolutely not. It's not going to suddenly turn you into a good player. And at the same time, I acknowledge the fact that it's not always in your best interest to play on the maximum 120 FoV. That's an argument against FoV sliders that I often see. It's not about wanting 120 FoV. It's about wanting the option to be able to tune that to where you would like it to be. For me personally, I really like a 105 FoV, and that makes a big difference to my gameplay compared to playing on an 80 FoV. In fact, after I made the switch to PC, anytime I have tried to go back and play Warzone on a console with an 80 FoV, I hate it. I just can't go back to it, and I don't want to go back to it. And this is what a very large portion of the player base is currently stuck with. And I wouldn't have a problem with this if we didn't have crossplay, especially crossplay that's on by default. And in the case of Xbox, it is forced crossplay. You can't even disable it. PlayStation players can, but for many people, myself included, it's very hard to find a full lobby with a reasonable connection if you do disable crossplay. So at the moment, we kind of have a situation where it almost feels like a lot of console players are just cannon fodder for the actual Warzone players, the people that are playing on PC and getting the full experience out of it. Of course, really good console players can still hold their own against PC players, but I'd be willing to bet they'd definitely be playing at least a little bit better if they had that FoV slider available, and they're not able to reach their full potential as a result of this. So Warzone is just straight up not a level playing field when it comes to the platform that you're playing on. And of course, this isn't a new issue. This is something we've been dealing with since the launch of Warzone. But the big issue that's happening right now is the fact that this has been one of the most requested features for well over a year now in Warzone. It's been something the community has been pushing very, very hard for, and the developers even acknowledged this in a Q&A session where other YouTubers and myself were able to attend and ask the developers questions. One of the big questions we asked, of course, was about the FoV slider, and they did mention that they're aware that the community really wants this, and they're going to be looking into it for the future. And this was about 9 months ago now. Now, another big thing that I think is leading to a lot of this frustration is the fact that with their presentation when they first discussed the Warzone Pacific, when they were doing the whole Vanguard reveal, they had a section talking about Warzone Pacific, and one of the big things that they said was the fact that Warzone Pacific is going to be sharing the same tech and engine as Vanguard. And since Vanguard has an FoV slider, many people very reasonably expected that this means the FoV slider would be coming with the Warzone Pacific update. But then, as time went on and as we got closer to the update, they never really mentioned or acknowledged the FoV slider at all. And now that the update is here, we can see for ourselves that there's just straight up no FoV slider. And to top this off, there's also no communication surrounding the FoV slider. If you go to any one of Call of Duty's tweets or YouTube videos, and you look at the replies in the comment section to that, it is just filled with people talking about FoV sliders for console. Like it or not, this is a massive topic within the community right now, and we're not even really getting any communication surrounding this. I think at the very least, it would be great to get a blog post that specifically explains why they can't do an FoV slider for console. Or if they do have any concrete plans for an FoV slider, it would be great to hear some confirmation that it is actually something that they are working on for the future and something that we can expect to see. And if this is just something that they decided is not worth the resources to do, because it is doable with the amount of resources that they have available, an FoV slider on console is absolutely possible. It's just whether or not they're willing to put in the time and the resources to make that happen. And if they decide that they aren't going to be adding the FoV option to consoles, I think the next thing the community should be pushing for is console-only crossplay. So Xbox and PlayStation can play together and exclude PC players from their matchmaking. I feel like this is the next best thing and the most reasonable compromise to this FoV situation. If they're not going to give the console players the FoV slider, at least give all of them, Xbox players included, the ability to control their experience and have a level playing field in-game. Now, that's the main point I wanted to get across, but there's something else I wanted to address here, and this is the PC players especially that seem to be pushing back against a console FoV slider, which is ridiculous in my mind. Why shouldn't the game be as fair and level as possible? Why shouldn't we as a community be pushing for the game that we love to be the best that it can possibly be? For those PC players that don't think console should have an FoV slider, I truly feel that this is because they selfishly want to continue basically farming console players and racking up as many kills as possible, and they don't want to lose that little bit of an advantage that they have over those console players. They want that unfair advantage, and many feel like they've earned that unfair advantage because they've spent more money on their PC compared to people that just bought a console. Then there's another group of PC players that push back against the FoV slider by essentially minimizing it and saying it's not a big deal, it's really not going to change your gameplay at all, stop complaining about it, it's no big deal. Yet at the same time, almost none of those people that are saying that are playing on an 80 FoV on their PC, and there's a reason for that. As somebody that played on console for quite some time in Warzone and then dropped quite a bit of cash to buy a very high-end PC just so I could play Warzone, this is ridiculous to me. I feel everyone should have access to the same gameplay settings. Console players should have access to that FoV slider, or they should all have the option to disable crossplay and avoid playing with PC players, preferably by default. And for any of you console players out there that are truly upset with this situation, I urge you to not play Warzone. Boycott the game, continue pushing for either an FoV slider or the ability for all console players to disable crossplay, but again, please do so without the personal attacks to developers. That's not going to help your message at all if you're going to be doing that. Now, if you are a PlayStation player that's still going to be playing Warzone just because you enjoy it, even though you don't like the fact that there's no FoV slider, I also urge you to disable crossplay whenever possible. The more people that are actively disabling that crossplay option, the better the connection experience is going to be in crossplay disabled lobbies, and the faster the matchmaking will be as well. So there we have it. There's my little rant about the lack of an FoV slider with this Warzone Pacific update. I'm quite disappointed not only that the FoV slider didn't come, but also that we haven't really received proper official communication from the developers about this. Even as somebody that has moved on to PC with Warzone, this frustrates me a lot, and I really want to see this game be the best that it can be, which it is currently not. Of course, these are all just my opinions. I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think of the lack of an FoV slider option with this big Warzone Pacific update, especially after the developers said a long time ago that Warzone Pacific would be sharing the same tech and engine from Vanguard? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.